Okay guys, we're going to get started. It's nice to see such a healthy turnout for this panel on private practice, creating your career. I know that there are many folks who are interested in what that looks like and what the path is, and I will have these folks introduce themselves and let you guys know what their experience has been and hopefully can illuminate for us what that looks like, going from here to where they are now. They are both NYU alums, and I just want to welcome them and thank them for being here and taking the time today.
Great to be here.
Yes. So you guys can just go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hello, I'm really thrilled to be here, and I'm Nancy Wender, a 1996 grad, and I am in private practice now since 1999, and I work with individuals and couples, and I am now on my second suite of offices that I actually started. The first being in 2000 in the Chelsea area, and then 2007 in Tribeca. And I have 3 other full-time therapists who also have their offices within the suite, and they pay me rent, which I'll certainly talk to later. I'm very interested in issues of family of origin, relationship issues, life cycle issues, depression, etc. And I will also later speak to training, which I think is a vital part of all of this. And starting out my career in social work was at an outpatient drug and alcohol treatment center. And I've also worked at one of the outpatient clinics in the East Village. And it's really hard to encapsulate all of this in that, for me, it's, again, I will speak to this later, which is a complete career shift. And if any of you have made that shift, this is a very profound and wonderful experience that we all share. And I think you will find it very gratifying, as I have. So there'll be more questions certainly as we go along, but happy to be here.
I am also really happy to be here. I haven't been back at NYU for any events since graduating in '98. You've got my one paragraph bio in front of you. I had wonderful internships while I was here at NYU. My first year, I completely lucked out, and as a first-year student, wound up at Gay Men's Health Crisis. The other students who wound up there sort of threw daggers at me for a little while because it was a big mystery how I wound up there because it was very competitive even for the second years. So and then I was at Hedrick Martin Institute right down the street for my second year. So my NYU experience was really special. I found that it was difficult at times to be open about being somebody who is interested in private practice from the get-go. Some professors were much more open and friendly about discussing that and talking to you about their path, their private practice. There are professors here, I assume there are still professors who are private practices. Some professors are not as open to that. I didn't let it get in my way, but I still wanted a really broad, deep experience before opening private practice. And I got my first job at Upper Manhattan Mental Health Center. For personal reasons, I decided to move to San Francisco early in '99. That was wonderful. I found a social work position there on which I could support myself, albeit with roommates, but I could support myself while while working in an adult day health center, HIV, very serious psychiatric disorders, and mostly all of the clients were abused when they were younger, and some out of prison. I was there for 3 years, had wonderful supervision. I want to highlight, as we're going through this, that if I leave you with one thing today, just one, if you are planning on a career in private practice, find good mentors. If the person who's assigned to be your mentor is lacking in some way, everyone's got their strengths and weaknesses, find it elsewhere, but find it. Going into private practice, you really have to have a strong sense of yourself in the work, your relationship to whatever clients you're seeing and serving, group, individual, family, children, doesn't matter what it is. You have to have a really strong sense of yourself in order to, stronger than if you are going to remain in an institutional setting with lots of other professionals around you down the hall, people you can run and you can knock on someone else's door, can I run this past you? The relationships that you are going to be having with your clients, with the families, with the children, whatever your private practice is about, it falls on you. It doesn't fall on the hospital. It doesn't fall on the clinic. It doesn't fall on the government agency. It doesn't fall on somebody else. It falls on you. So you've got to have this strong sense of yourself. And what I decided to do was I went a standard route toward getting licensed in California. That took me 3 years. California had an extensive licensing, lots of hoops to jump through before New York did. I went through all of that, took my written, took my orals, got licensed, and opened my private practice 11 years ago, 12 years ago. But continued to work and got from the Adult Day Health Center, I decided I wanted different experiences. And I went to a staffing agency. And I ended up doing this wonderful, at the time I thought, what the hell am I doing? But in retrospect, it was like, I got a lot of rotations that I didn't get as a student here or in my earlier career. So I did 2 months of inpatient psych, 2 months of a senior center. I did a month here and a month there of different things, and it wound me up at Kaiser Permanente, which if I wanted to stay there for the rest of my life, I could have. But decided to come back here. So my career at Kaiser, as a licensed therapist, gave me the solidity, the income and the solidity, so that while I was starting the part-time private practice, I didn't have to worry. You don't want to be worrying about your own sense of self and your own security while you're starting a private practice, because you don't want that to pollute and muddy your relationship with your clients and your prospective patients. So Kaiser gave me that foundation, then I went down in hours at Kaiser a bit, and when I reached a certain tipping point in my private practice, after I did a little bit of inpatient work on all wards in the hospital. Wonderful, because then you get a real sense of what's going on for families and individuals dealing with their own death. Families having to take loved ones off of life support. That was an amazing experience. And then from there, I had the good fortune of being able to move over into outpatient psychiatry at Kaiser and be a therapist in outpatient psychiatry. And then reached the tipping point in my private practice where it was time to go, because I wanted to continue saying yes to people who were calling me, and I had no more hours left. So you'll know, it's like, you'll know for yourself, financially and emotionally. And maybe you'll never leave that. Maybe you'll never leave that job. Maybe you'll always have that. But I'm sure you guys have questions, so.
I'm going to ask a few things that I think might touch upon and illuminate what a lot of you are interested in knowing, and then we would definitely open up for questions, and we'll make sure we have time. Curious to know, did you know what specific career path you wanted to follow when you came to Silver? And how did you go about navigating and determining that path while you were here? For either.
I didn't really have a specific career path. The one thing I did know is that I was interested in being involved in therapy in some way or another. it became pretty clear to me as I went along that some sort of agency work at the get-go was going to be important for me. And to Adam's point too, I think it's really important to have as many opportunities as possible before opening a private practice. Along the way, I really also came to have a lot of understanding, appreciation, and respect for people's struggles with addictions. That was my first placement, and it was fantastic. These were women in day treatment straight out of Rikers. It was a really marvelous hands-on experience, and I think addictions really go across the spectrum, not just drugs, alcohol. It could be shopping, gambling, love, anything. And that really gave me a lens to look at the individual people who came into me. It could be couples, it could be the individual that I'm seeing either struggling with an addiction or a partner, and that was an eye-opener for me. And my path to private practice was not a straight shot. It was first the agency work. My first job was outpatient drug and alcohol treatment. I worked in a parole program, and this was at Greenwich House.
So that's tough.
Yeah, it was rather extraordinary. It gave me here I was, this white woman seeing primarily folks of color, and I just had to learn how to go with resistance. When people came to me, they were not so interested in seeing me. They were mandated straight out of prison. They had no choice. They had to look for a job. They had to be treated. And they really didn't want to be seeing me. So my goal was, what is the one thing I can help you with? Can I help you reunite with your children? Can I help you find a new home? Can I help you with your marriage? Whatever it happens to be, let's concentrate on one thing that matters to you. And I also learned to really listen very carefully to people. I found out an enormous compassion, but I also realized, okay, people have traveled in the world and have been able to succeed or lack thereof by virtue of knowing how the system works. So I had to be very aware of who people were, listen, really want to be helpful, but have a little bit of a moment of questioning, just to be sure I was really clear what I was seeing and hearing. Eventually, I moved into the outpatient drug alcohol treatment, kept a few of my parole patients, and by the way, I had to have a lot of dialogue with parole officers. We had to send drug samples in to be tested. It was, I really saw myself, unfortunately, not as a police person, but hopefully a help. And then the outpatient mental health clinic in the East Village was absolutely wonderful. And it really developed over time. Again, not a straight shot from graduation straight into private practice. I think my one proviso, or my one word of wisdom, yours is supervision, Adam. For me, it was training. Training was vital. And very important, especially to have the wealth of experiences, the contacts, the mentors, etc. So no, for me it was an evolutionary process based on my interests, my worldview. This was an extraordinary opportunity to be at NYU. It really was life-changing for me. And I could not be happier, really. It's been amazing. So.
I think there's so much to say, and it's hard to edit out given the time frame that we have today. So I'd rather drill down to some specific things. Continuing on what Nancy was just saying, I think the difference between people who pursue private practice and people who stay in institutional work, which is all social work is noble. We're not comparing things here in terms of that one is more evolved and one, no. We need extremely strong people with all the same skills staying in institutions prisons, hospitals, halfway houses, everywhere. But if you decide to go into private practice, if it's not a calling for you, don't do it. The question was, I think if I remember the question, I was a dancer, I was a professional dancer, and I got injured and I had to stop dancing. And I always knew that when I stopped dancing I would go to college. I went to Hunter College, I was in the honors program there, psychology, philosophy, and sociology. And then spoke to a whole bunch of professors there to decide, do I want to go for my PhD in psychology or do I want to go social work? Long story short, I ended up going social work because I knew I wanted to be with clients and patients. I felt there are enough people out there doing research. I want it applied. I want people to be executing on this research. We've got research out the wazoo. Are people eating their broccoli? Are they exercising 30 minutes a day? Are they going to the doctor when they need to go to the doctor? And that's why all of you will get jobs. All of you will get jobs because we still need to help people take care of themselves. This is not just about, even if you go into private practice, this is not about you magically helping someone enlighten themselves. If you go into private practice, you may have a 10-year relationship with someone who's very high functioning in some ways, and on this other line in their life, something mysterious or something obviously emotional needs that support. And it might not be about some lofty enlightenment, it might be about they need to see you, the unbiased person who's outside of their friendship circle, outside of their family, who helps them get back on track just a little bit. Month after month, and they just need that support. I feel strongly about what I said, that this requires feeling like you have a calling. Nancy's nodding. We have colleagues who we see in the private practice world. But they may only talk about how tired they are, or they may talk about money, or they may not talk about their career at all and talk about how they're remodeling the beach house. This is truly profound work. The relationships that you will have with your clients, with your patients, whatever you call them, if it doesn't touch you, then you shouldn't be in private practice. You'll hear 10 other opinions from 10 other people that you talk to, but I'm sitting in front of you talking to you now. Why? Because that's the sensitivity level that it takes. Because it's not about someone wandering into Kaiser Permanente, winding up in front of ex-therapist because they don't have a choice. And then discovering 6 sessions later, the hospital has to give me somebody else. And then they go from therapist to therapist at the hospital. That's a whole different thing. From they show up on your doorstep, and it may not work out, right? And you're going to refer them out to somebody else. But it's different. Because you've got to try to make that connection with them in a different way than if you've got the hospital standing behind you, the family clinic standing behind you. It's subtle, but there's a difference. You are the institution. You are. It's a very sacred. Vocation, and it's a sacred promise that you're making to a patient. And you've got your contract with your patient, and there are agreements. I agree to show up on time. I agree to bring all of myself to it with all of my experience and my personal, myself as a person to it. You need to pay me. You have your contracts. There's stuff there, but this is simply put, I find it a sacred process. So know that about yourself. You may not look at it that way, and that's fine, but know that. So really know yourself when you come to it. I was an ex-dancer, knew I wanted to study psychology, knew that I wanted to help people, started doing volunteer work way before I got to the social work school, so that because I didn't want to come to social work school if I knew that I didn't like working with people. So there are ways that you can experiment with it before getting yourself in so deep that you're going to have regrets. And before I turn it back to these beautiful ladies, I'm going to say, don't worry about making mistakes, because when you're 50, when you're 16 years out of it, it's just all learning. You're just learning what you like, what you don't like, which types of characters, meaning characterological constellations, you can't work with, and which ones you adore, and how you have to adjust yourself to be more neutral with both, right? Don't worry about the making the mistakes and trying things and feeling like you're wasting time. One of the questions on here is, what did you regret? Well, I don't believe in regret, because I think it's all learning. If you feel like you're rushing through something or bypassing something because you don't have the time, I invite you to meditate on that. Because they said this to me when I was going to school here, and I was rushing around, I was working at the same time, I was a personal trainer. After I stopped dancing, I was doing personal training and Pilates for pocket money, and I always felt like, I don't have time. Read everything. Read, just really get into it, because it's the whole rest of your life. And if you feel like you're taking a shortcut somewhere, just become conscious of that and just see what that's about. Because later, like when you're 16 years from now, you're gonna want to like pick up a book on something where previously you took a shortcut and you didn't read that book, or you didn't read that article, or you didn't learn about. And when they sat me down here and said, what do you not want to work with? Do they still do that? What do you not want to do? I said, I don't want to work with substance abusers. I was scared. I was sheltered in that way in my life. I had never experimented with anything. Turns out you can't avoid it. You're not going to be able to avoid it. So, again, meditate on it. Just see what that's about for yourself. Because at some point, you're going to come up against having to deal with addictions of all kinds. It's that you don't have a choice. So, in a very long-winded way, I could have just answered the question by saying it was a calling, but I was more long-winded than that, I'm sorry.
We like long-winded around here, at least I do. I told you both that I was not going to go off-road, but I can't help myself. What I'm finding extra interesting about what you just were saying is, to me, the connection between knowing yourself and identifying a calling. Because I don't know about any of the rest of you, but when he said a calling, I thought, gosh, do I have a calling? Wait, what is my calling? Maybe maybe it was that. And I don't think that means that I don't have a calling. I think it means and I'm going to use your words, which are so well put, I'm going to invite myself to meditate on that and allow the space to know myself and know who I am. Not just right now, but every time I go to field placement. And really think about what the impact is and of what it feels like.
I just had a little thought about what you said, because it is finding a calling maybe within this larger profession, but then you both also said try to get as much diverse experience before you focus as you can. So it's kind of a balance. Like, you may know that you want to go into private practice, but not know what you want your specialty to be at, because you haven't exposed yourself to various specialties yet, and then, you know, or you might think you know what you want your specialty to be, but then something else comes up in your second field placement, and you think, oh, that's really interesting, and I wasn't exposed to it before. Maybe that's my calling, you know.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
You may not have discovered it yet. Yeah.
I think it reveals itself to you and it unfolds over time, and what I would say is, you're here and you're in this present moment, and you're with all these students and you're with us. So moment by moment, your calling brought you to NYU, for starters. And so I think that what you can always fall back on is when you ask the question, when you look into meaning, what does this mean? And you're going to have plenty of time. You're going to have all the time in the world to reflect on that. What does this mean? But the answer to that question is usually much, 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 much smaller than you imagine. It's usually much simpler and much smaller. So your calling got you here.
Right, good point. What are some of the most surprising things, good and bad, that you found in the course of your work?
For me, it's constantly being reminded of being very grateful for my life, to be honest. There's really a sense, what has also really surprised me is how much I love doing this work. I absolutely love it. It speaks to my values, it speaks to my worldview. What kind of took me a bit by surprise was realizing that I actually had a choice of the people I would like to work with. It became very hard for me to say no to people. And I think over the years I've been able to be a little more self-directed to say, I don't have time, I'm so sorry. I get deluged by inquiries for couples therapy or individual therapy. And to your point, Adam, some of the people I've seen for 13, 14 years. And in one case, there is this particular patient who followed me from the East Village Clinic. I'm the only person she speaks with. She really doesn't have friends. Her significant other is 35 years older than she. She can't really talk to him. A different generation. I am truly the only person that she feels she can communicate with and really know I adore her. And people that I work with, I feel that way about. It's constant learning. It's constant learning about ourselves. It's a sense of being humble. It's a sense, as you were saying, there really is no mistake. I apologize to patients if I think I might have hurt their feelings. I see it as collaborative. I'm not the mount on high telling them what to do. This is really a relationship, and it's very important to me. I take it very personally, very responsibly. I've had folks that have been in the psych hospital, one person 3 times. I visit her, I would call every day. I mean, people know they can find me, but they also know that there are particular boundaries, and I think over the years I've come to be a little more respectful of my own time, but that was a learning situation. I was an open book, yes, of course, elastic hours, what I used to say. I'll see you later, I'll see you earlier. And now I really think one of the critical things is a good work-life balance. I have a life that I love. It makes me appreciate my life every day. And the things people come to me with are very sobering. And we can celebrate the beautiful moments, we can celebrate the tragedies. People have had horrendous losses, a lot of trauma. And I'm really on this journey with them. And I find another piece that we have not yet spoken about is the need to continue our own individual therapy. My therapist is one of the sublime thinkers. He's really a multifaceted person. He's an artist, he is a writer, is very involved in all of the different disciplines, be it philosophy, art, he paints. I actually started in college as a voice major. I thought I was going to be a music therapist. So, long story around the bend here, one of the ways that I feel I can communicate my voice is through language and through writing. And that was one of the things the social work program instilled in me, is really that desire to communicate in words. Both the rhythm of hearing the way people express their narratives, which grow and change over time. It's a constant learning situation. I can see someone for 12, 13, 14 years and I'm learning something new all the time. I can't assume I have all the answers. We are collaborative. We try to figure it out. To me, as Adam said, there's no wrong thing that I could say if I really feel I've upset someone. It's really important to be right out there and say, I'm sorry, I think I hurt your feelings. Let's talk about this. With couples, being very aware of their family of origin issues, each of them, and then how they come together, it's really powerful. And there is this intrinsic feeling of being in the room with someone and just feeling this certain sense of who these people are. There's a lot of intuitive of who people are. And for me, that's a valuable thing. It's just not the learning, but it's self-exploration, a sense of really being able to feel who people are. I know it sounds a little hocus pocus here, but it's really real. I've come to really trust that about myself. And I can't always know where it comes from, but I really trust through my own therapy, through a lot of years of doing this work. It is constantly illuminating. It is so gratifying. I think, again, the issue of saying no to people was really hard. I don't want to disappoint people. But yet I want to bring my best. So at times I have to say no. But I'm very conscientious about referrals. We have other therapists in the office. If it's appropriate, we refer to each other. But I've never looked back. It is an extraordinary sacred trust, big responsibility. And for me to have people trust me with something so personal is really a gift.
Sorry.
Oh, I just have a question, and thank you so much, guys, for coming. I mean, it's a lot. It's your time. And I know this is probably not so fun to talk about, but the administrative part of running a private practice. I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about what it's like, you know, insurance, private pay, different logistical issues that.
It's very nuts and bolts. You decide whether you want to do the insurance game of taking payment directly from an insurance company or not. I don't. A lot of people I know don't. For the very same reasons or for different reasons than I don't, which is that I can't have an insurance company interrupt my relationship with a client. If the client and I need to adjust their fee, if a client and I need to move, even if we don't like the idea, if we need to move to every other week instead of every week, because that's better than them not coming at all, that's between us. But I won't, and I've been this way from the start because I came out of institutional work. And so I spent the first part of my career being limited in certain ways by the institutions I worked for, which is fine. Those institutions need to do that so that they can stay afloat. And there's a reason for those rules, because they're taking care of large populations. So in my private practice, I decided not to have that interfere. That if my client needed to work it out with me, they'd work it out directly with me. What you do is you provide your client with once you're licensed, you provide your client with a super bill that's got all the codes and necessary things on it so that if their insurance company does reimburse, That's a relationship between the client and their insurance company. I'm a social worker. I'm not a PhD psychologist. I love being a social worker. I will spend as much time as my client needs talking about how to help them deal with their insurance company. But it's not my relationship with the insurance company. I do a lot of education with people who are unsuspecting about insurance companies. For one, different people have different levels of consciousness or awareness or openness about the real world. It is a fact that certain insurance companies will make a big deal out of a diagnosis of I had a client who was chronically depressed and has charts all over the place in different cities and different treatment, and I diagnosed him with double depression. And now the fact of the matter is he had a trust fund and he didn't want to charge insurance. A chronic double depression on your insurance. Now, if someone needs treatment, they need treatment. If that's the only way to pay for it, then fine. But unfortunately, in the United States, that type of a thing can follow you. Is it good or bad? That's not the point. The point is I'm educating my patient. I'm not talking about political issues with my client. I'm not talking about. I will help them figure out, though, if there's no other way for them to pay for these services that they need, and I know that they're at risk, come on, there's no question. Plus, unfortunately, maybe they're going to be struggling with this for a very long time, and they're going to need these services for a very long time. Hopefully, they'll be able to either be employed with a good insurance plan, under a group plan, under a job, because then they won't be denied. Or maybe this is a person who will end up on disability. So, on the one hand, it's simple, because you make up your own mind what you're comfortable with as a practitioner. What kinds of paperwork are you comfortable dealing with? Are you going to handle it all yourself, or do you have an entrepreneurial spirit and you're going to grow an office that has interns and younger, whatever that means in the career, in the profession, younger licensed people, and you have the capital to rent out space and then rent out offices. That's not something I'm into. But in that case, you might have an administrative assistant who's handling things for you. There's all kinds of software out on the market these days that I've got friends of mine use. I'm very old-fashioned, and I like to keep, on purpose, I keep things as simple as possible. Because I'm not techie, and I'm not a tech person. I like to keep things really simple. And I don't use a lot of that software, but I'll give you an example of something. Insurance companies will trick you. Even if you're attempting to stay out of it, they'll trick you. Your patient has a job, your patient has insurance. Your patient has submitted the super bill. You get a call. Hi, Mr. Barrett, we're calling from Brown Doors Company. Please give us a call back because your patient so-and-so, and they'll name the person, has this, we have this payment, but we'll expedite this to you. We'll expedite this to you if you give us a call back. And if you settle for a slightly lower rate, we'll get you this money a lot sooner. What they don't know is how I run my practice. What they don't know is that my relationship is with my patient. I never, ever, ever return those calls. But this is the world we live in these days. Now, some of you might be first years, but you're smart enough to know that ethically, I can't return that call. Why? My patient hasn't signed a consent for release of information form that says, when my devious insurance company calls you to settle for a lower rate in order to pay you back, well, I get paid by you, so I don't need to make that call. And they haven't signed that paperwork because we haven't signed stacks of paperwork. in case Joe Schmo from Atlanta calls Adam Barrett to discuss their case. Come on now. So, pretty devious, huh, on the part of an insurance company. They're not saying, I have a consent for release of information in my hand. So those are some things you need to be aware of. So on the one hand, it's very simple, nuts and bolts. How do you want to run your practice? On the other hand, you do need to keep up on laws and ethics. Some of it can seem very obvious. If you're in the middle of a busy day, though, and you're just kind of like in returning phone call mode, you have to stop yourself and say, wait a second, what's this about? And then for me, I just always bring it back to my patient.
I do things differently, and I can appreciate what you're saying. I think my economic imperatives might give me some choices, which I'll speak to later. Number one, I have the office that I have to manage. I have 3 other therapists paying me rent. I have to, we have someone clean for us, so I have to do payroll reports. I have to order supplies. I have to have things fixed. So I'm both a landlord and a colleague. And so the whole office as it's structured is all on me. And in terms of my paperwork, I think I fall more onto the tech side of things. Because many patients don't have money up front, I'm willing to take a lower copay from them and submit to insurance myself and wait for the reimbursement. Most of the time that works well. Adam spoke about the insurance companies or the super organizations trying to ask us to expedite the fee. I constantly refuse it, send it back. It comes to me by fax. I do patient billing at the end of the month. I give them an invoice. I've just started doing something that is very new to me. I got the little square reader so I can take credit cards. So this is a new technological thing. I generate my claim forms for the patient on their behalf. I code them. I have a template on my computer. I don't use a service. I guess I like to have control over all that. I keep notes on every session. I take notes only in the first session with patients. Or something, if we're doing a lot of history of family or something, I might take some notes. I always ask. No one's refused me. So I'm really very diligent about all these things. To me, it's very important that I try to be as circumspect in my notes as I can be. I try to be very fair about a diagnosis. We talk about the diagnosis. It's been a real learning experience. It's evolved over time. Originally, I was on the Oxford panel. I removed myself from that. I have 2 Medicare patients. Other than that, I accept no insurance. If people have out-of-network benefits, they tell me. If they want to submit, I do the paperwork. I send it. I'm doing them a favor. They're doing me a favor. It works for me. I can really understand and appreciate how you feel about it. I do it differently, and perhaps
But you have an office. You also have an office to run.
I do, and so
People depending on you.
Yeah, and I deal with the building, and there are a lot of those kinds of administrative things. So now I'm into I did 7 years in the first space. The space I'm in, I actually bought. So I had to build it. I wanted an environment that would be warm and relaxing, and people would feel well tended to. It's very calm. It's just part of my value system that I want people to feel really respected. Mm-hmm. And they walk in and they feel wonderful. They really do. From people with no money to people with a fair amount of money. And it just strikes this calm, nurturing environment for people. So I have a lot of those responsibilities.
Oh, and of course you've got your malpractice insurance,
yes.
Your slip and fall insurance,
yes.
You know, and it actually doesn't cost that much.
Right.
So you get all of it, and you get it.
Yes, you can. There are other ways.
There are other ways.
Yeah, but you can. Yeah. So there are a lot of logistical things I have it as streamlined as I can make it. I present the bill at the end of the month. Some people bring a check. I'm just, as I said, start the credit card opportunity for people. They may take the bill with them, send it to me. It's done at the end of the month. I am very diligent about not having a long history of people having to pay me for months and months and months and months in arrears. I really try to work with people. I have a few people I've seen over time that I don't charge, or I can slide the fee. And so I really listen to my own values in how this goes.
You've got to be comfortable with it.
Exactly.
You've got to be able to sit, with all this administrative stuff, you've got to be able to sit comfortably in your own skin around it. If something's making you squirmy about the contract that you've made with someone who works for you in your office, and you know, or with the client, then that really, you got to listen to that. Because one of the things that, to go back to the question of what's the most surprising thing to you, in a positive way, one, I've got a 95-year-old client who, I never knew that a 95-year-old could make so many changes. So that was a huge surprise. The other surprise is just how immensely important it's not supervision because I'm an LCSW, but it's consultation. Just how rich the consultation relationship can be through the years. Because whether it's this administrative side of things, or whether it's the much murkier, more mysterious side of a relationship with a client, at the end of the day, your goal is to be as comfortable in your own skin with everything that's going on. You've got your doubts. You'll say, "Oh, I made a mistake with or with someone's," or "I think I'm going to have to apologize to so and so," or whatever it is. But you want that coming from a really solid base of feeling really solid, comfortable in your own skin. Not some overly apologetic, not some backpedaling, not some, and this takes time. This doesn't come. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna tell you my bias. I'm gonna tell you my bias, and my bias is this doesn't happen your first year out of social work school. And that's why it's great. I think it's great to have the institutional work behind you so you can feel your way through that. And then once you start, once you're, I started my private practice a long time ago, but what surprises me about my career is I started dancing when I was 6 years old. And danced professionally until I was 25, and I stopped a little bit early. Other people had to stop even earlier. I never thought that I would have the feeling about being a social worker and the feeling about being a therapist that was the same feeling about being a dancer, which was this is what I was put here on the planet to do. And it really surprised me that I arrived at a place of feeling like, yeah, no, this was really what I was put here to do. The negative surprise, I didn't know when I was going to school here, and I didn't know when I graduated, that even if I had the opportunity to work with someone for a year to 6 years, I didn't know then that some people aren't going to get better. And that was tough for me. I'm pretty sensitive, and that was that learning, that coming to that solid understanding in your practice, and then saying, well, what does this mean then? What are we doing here? You could be the only person in their whole life you're opening up to, not their brother, not their husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend, not a best friend. You may be it. That doesn't mean they're going to get better. And it's not lots of people in your practice, but occasionally it's not about them getting better. It's about this relationship. And as long as you can figure out how to hang in there with them, emotionally and financially, and these are the people that you really bring into your own therapy and to your own, into your own, these are the, because you will need to continually have perspective on those relationships versus the folks who zoom ahead and graduate from you in 4 years and it's all, we'll have coffee once in a while or whatever, or however you do your boundaries. Know how you're going to do your boundaries. That's part of, that's why you really have to know yourself. I lived in California for a long time. New York and California are very different boundary-wise. I could write a book about that. Know yourself so you know your boundaries so you can stick to them. You need to be able to describe why you do your boundaries the way you do them.
You were talking about entrepreneurial spirit before, and my question, I've seen friends who are trying to develop practice not being able to draw in clients. What recommendation, what advice would you give to us all sitting here? We're still students, but what was your path? What kind of advice could you give us? And also, on a little side note, how do you get on insurance panels?
The process of patients coming to me, I call them patients, really came through a variety of sources. It was cobbling together a variety of activities until the tipping point, as Adam said, happened where I was more thoughtful in terms of, okay, this is absolutely what I want to do. My very first job had a particular man who left the program, called me after the fact and said, I'd like to see you privately. I was doing training in couples and family therapy at the Ackerman Institute for the Family, and if any of you really are interested in the family of origin issues, it is a wonderful, wonderful experience there. The training programs also, that was one of the two of the training programs I had completed. People were referred to me through that. Supervisors, my own therapist, friends. It really became a process. It wasn't the immediate, open my door, say hello, here are my patients. It really took time. And a lot of it's word of mouth. I might work with a psychiatrist for a patient. Then that psychiatrist said, I think so-and-so should see Nancy. Things come from all different ways. Part of the being the landlord is that I put an ad in the Tribeca paper. My office is in Tribeca. I wanted to appeal to the community. People call. So basically, very few of the patients who call do I take. I might refer to other people in the office or whatever. I put a profile on Psychology Today. That really has brought a lot of people to me. It's really interesting how that came to be. But as I really indicated, I have to be very careful who I say yes to. It's so easy for me to say yes and then really feel that I can't do somebody the best of me by doing that. It really took time. It could have been, be it a job where people found me. It built. It was 1 day a week with an office, then it became 2, then it became 3. I left the East Village Clinic. I finished my training at Ackerman, kept adding days. Then the next step was getting my first suite of offices. And I then at the front desk had students, grad students or man the desk. They took care of some of the administrative things. There were a lot of therapists in there. But again, my ethic was, let's do it in a way that really is honoring people. And then after that lease was up, I came down to Tribeca, brought a couple of therapists with me, and opened this suite of offices in 2007. So it really has taken a lot of time. It's happened through training, through jobs, through supervisors, therapists, doctors. It's been a building process. And I'm at the point that I really do, sad to say, have to turn away many more people than I can see. And I am very conscientious about making sure it's a good referral. I really am diligent about that. but it took time.
And it doesn't sound like it was about marketing. It was just about existing and
Networking.
being in different places.
Right, and learning about myself, that's a continual lifelong thing for your 95-year-old patient, in addition to someone who might be just out of college. I mean, we're all learning about ourselves. It's never too late to grow and change. At least that's another thing that I think is so important. But it takes time.
I think when it comes to marketing, everything is marketing. It's just that sometimes someone's seeing your face for the first time on your website. Sometimes they're seeing it your name for the first time on your card. Sometimes it's a flyer, but all of this is marketing. I have nothing to add. I mean, Nancy covered everything. You could be working someplace and you're running a group, and 2 years later you get a phone call, and somebody from that group says, "I've moved back to your city. I was in your group for a couple of years. I will only come to see you." Well, I hope you're shopping around. Here are 2 other names. I always do that. It might be your choice to only come see me. I'm still going to give you 2 other names because you want to note that you've done that, and you want to note that you've encouraged the person to shop around, not being rejecting or dismissive. I guess you guys probably had a class there too. But Nancy basically covered everything. Everything's marketing. How you get media exposure or things like that. You know, like Greta wrote a book, and Greta, got on CNN. Everything helps. It comes back to, I think it also comes back to my message of know yourself and know what works for you, and whether you're more the type of person who wants to work and keep working and then build it that way, or whether you're the kind of person who wants to have a big splashy website as soon as you get out of social work school.
Like Dr. Zismore on the subway.
Yes.
He's got great skin.
We have about 5 minutes, just shy of 5 minutes, so maybe a couple quick questions and then we'll have to wrap.
Can you describe what an institute is like and what you did there? I mean, I understand a little bit about it. Did you join Stillwater?
I did not. What I have to say about that is, if you're not going to go to an institute, have a supervisor who you feel like is someone you never want to leave your life. I want you to have consultation that feels really, really, really solid to you, not kind of like it gets you through the week. If you don't have that, and you're not in your own therapy, then go to an institute, because the institute is going to give you the therapy, knowing that you want to be a therapist. So they're going to be asking you to really dig deep, both personally and also in your professional mind. If you can piece that together yourself, I say fine. I started psychotherapy when I was 16 years old and was in and out since 16 years old. For personal reasons, I decided not to do the institute thing. I decided to do I'm going to get to work as a social worker, have amazing supervision. When my boss was no longer good enough for me, I told them, and they pulled a psychiatrist from the board of the agency, and I was meeting with him an hour a week, discussing all of my clients with him, plus a group supervisor, plus just the peers getting together. I cobbled it together myself enough to know that I could defend myself when folks who really felt that the institute process was the only way to go. I felt secure in myself that I had cobbled that together on my own, between my own therapy and all these other forms of supervision and consultation, peer, group, and then having an expert, guru, mentor on your side.
Maybe one last question.
But you didn't answer.
Oh, sorry.
I guess for me, an institute really provided many things. One, I happened to find completely in sync with my values and the way I learned, and that was the Alumni Institute for the Family that I described. We worked in a team for 2 years. We were seen behind a one-way mirror. We had to videotape our sessions. I saw moms and young boys. I saw couples. There was a lot of didactic work. There was a lot of reading. There was a lot of paperwork. but it was a team. And the two different supervisors I had were really diametrically opposed to each other in their philosophy, their upbringing, their culture, etc. It was really a wonderful experience for me. It was really hard work. One day I'd be there 14 hours a day, 5 hours of supervision, didactic with the part-time people who came in later in their day. I'd see 4 families or couples in the evening, the paperwork, etc., etc. It was a lot of work, but it felt gratifying, it felt concrete, it felt usable, it felt really just in sync with the things I felt and believed. And the way to treat people, the way people's problems had developed. And I'm a big believer in family of origin issues. People have these templates, these particular imprinting through childhood. Ackerman really helped us understand how that worked. And it's not so different in a way from NYU with the environment, one's own biology, psychology, etc. I think that was very much in sync. And I
the biopsychosocial.
Yeah, thank you. And the other institute was more off-putting to me, which was, sorry to say, the NYU Medical Center was their adult psychodynamic psychotherapy program. I am not a strict Freudian in any sense of the word. I am a cherry picker. I have particular theorists, I believe, a certain value system that orients me. I was different, and I did things in a very different way. I'm glad I did it. My second-year supervisor was a dream. I'm still in touch with him. He's referred people to me. It was more of an institutional feel. It didn't feel as personal. I'm glad I did it because it helped me also understand what I didn't want to be or how I didn't want to practice. But both of the experiences, I think, also gave me more of a sense of legitimacy. I came to this having worked in advertising a number of years. I did development work at 2 nonprofits. I had a consulting company working with a couple of different nonprofit organizations. I wasn't young when I did this. So for me, it felt important to have the stability under my feet, the sense of, I really now feel I have a better idea what I'm doing. And it was important for me to have that credential. And I learned in spite of myself. But the Ackerman experience, I continue to believe, was one of that and NYU here were the 2 things that were the most important in all of my training, development, etc. So, does that answer what you're... I can certainly spend a lot of time. I'm happy to do it. If you want to get in touch with me, I'll be happy to talk.
And that's good to know, because unfortunately we do have to wrap up. Maybe, I don't know if you all have time to hang out for a moment, if students have time, but thank you both, Nancy, Adam, thank you so much for